Welcome to Climate Curious Quickies, bite-sized nuggets of climate goodness from our TEDx experts in under 10 minutes.
What if the best way to understand the climate crisis was to play a game? That's what game designer Mel Francis and theatre maker Nathan Harrison set out to do with The Future for Beginners, an immersive climate solution. A far cry from Monopoly and Snakes and Ladders, The Future for Beginners game throws players into an unsettling scenario, testing you to think under pressure and prioritise the unthinkable. On why playing this board game might just prepare you for a job at the UN, here's Mel Francis and Nathan Harrison. Stay curious.
No one's won it in the way that you did on Monday, so I did wonder about what strategy had gone on there.
It's a wonder that the Air Force don't adopt that, because that feels like the most efficient.
Just pile all the planes on top of each other, right?
I would like to say that it was like premeditated. It was not. It was that you were like 3, 2, 1, and I was like, throw them all.
Yeah. And I think speed is a really interesting component, right? Because
there were so many times you did this.
A couple of times in the game. So early on, there's a choice that you have to make very quickly.
Yes.
And in terms of disaster response, you're given 10 seconds to make decisions. And I think that this is also a really, sometimes again, when we can think about decisions at a distance, there's this real sense of like, when we get to think through and reason through and consider all of the different components, we might make one decision. But when we're under time pressure and someone's standing there being like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? A slightly different decision gets made. So I think that that's one of our tools, I guess, as designers.
I think so.
I mean, one of the situations you put us in was classic prisoner's dilemma, where for those who don't know, like if everyone acts together, you do better. But if only some people act, then those people are like disadvantaged, right? I have to say, I've always thought that if I was in a prisoner's dilemma situation, I would work for the collective good. I did not. And I convinced the entire table. I was just like, guys, no one else is going to vote for this. We're not going to be the fools to vote for this. So don't do it. Or like pay for it. Like put our, and we didn't. And then we ended up with the most. But the crazy thing, right, from that really got me, and this is the psychology people, was that later when I tried to go around and do some like regional diplomacy, people really hated me.
Yeah, they remember.
They were like, you did not contribute. You better give us stuff now. And that coupled with the fact that we like won that game to become like the leaders in the rare earth minerals, and the fact that you had told us that we were the most beautiful, fashionable region. People really did not like us by the end. Okay. I like carried that persona all week, by the way, just so you know.
We can just sit with you being from the most attractive, stylish town for a bit if you want.
It's fine. Okay. But the idea of this kind of gaming and immersive, interactive theatre is so powerful. As designers in it, and as people who've obviously seen so many people play this game, what is the power of this, do you feel, for being part of this climate movement, being like meeting this moment we need to meet?
I mean, it's a big question. I think one of the things is that games like this can go into spaces that sometimes it's hard to have these conversations. Like this can sort of fit in like a boardroom or, you know, like lots of places that maybe people want to have the chat, but it's a bit hard to start that. And again, it's a nice way to let people leave all their political baggage at the door and just play. But I think a really important part of the game and all the work we do, I think, is like having a conversation afterwards. And the thing that the game can do is let you embody these ideas and really feel what it's like to navigate these systems qualities, these trade-offs, these tipping points that we're all facing. And then afterwards have a really good conversation about it, grounded in what it felt like to play. And all the material is there and the story was there. And you can kind of then compare that to the real world. But there's something really important about embodying that with a sense of fun as well, that it's not harsh, this is inviting, it's playful. Yeah.
And I think it can you create a shared experience, right? With all the people who are there. And there are these moments, you tell a story together. So we have a story that we're telling as facilitators, but this whole other story emerges in the room and the dynamics between people. And I think what you say about how we think we might behave and then how we actually behave in that space is a really interesting thing to experience, because suddenly you're like, oh, what is the reason that I ended up doing this thing rather than this thing? And I think it shows some of the gaps, or it illuminates some of the challenges in a really useful way. And I think that as well, as you often say really well, that like sometimes the game is really about getting people into the space to have a good conversation afterwards. But I think in that way that is dialogic, there isn't a set of things that we want you to learn from the game. So it's not particularly it's not didactic in what it's offering at all, really, but it's asking questions and it's illuminating dynamics. And it's not a game where kind of like you do see the impact of the things that you do. So as much as it's not didactic, we are showing things or trying to show things as they are. So there is this moment where you see a tipping point, spoiler, but see a tipping point tip, and then you can have a conversation about what that felt like and what that is and where that came from. And I think that we've just, after all of the games here, we've had these really great discussions about why did a thing work in this particular way, and then here are all the examples we've seen of how that's happened in the real world. And I think it's a really great spark for shared reflection. And when people come from really different backgrounds, context, spaces, it can be a point of shared experience that can then spark discussion.
For me, the thing that was really visceral was feeling the short-term wins versus the long-term wins. So feeling that, we did this thing, we built this road, we like have this great thing happening, and then in the background we're investing in these like long-term things and we don't know what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden you have like the extreme weather events, you have the other things, and it just comes in and derails everything. And it just made me further reflect on why it's so easy for us to focus on the short-term things that feel good and not the long-term things. But then those long-term things are the things that give us the resilience, the real protective. It was we had someone who worked in humanitarian assistance on the table, and she went on and on, and she was the only one who brought up like the kind of evacuation centers or the education programs. And I kept being like, this is just a waste of money. Like in my head, I was like, we should not be spending on this. And then at one point again, it became very obvious that we needed to be. I thought, wow, this is why I love games like this, is because actually what it does is that it really shows you what you actually think and what you might actually do in certain circumstances rather than what you assume you know and think.
I think as well, sorry, just to jump on that.
Please.
I think not in the sense of letting us off the hook, but I think one of the things that I quite like that the game does is show that it is hard.
Yes.
And like you want to do all these things for very good reasons. And like it's all good and well to be like, oh no, we actually need to do all these long-term things. But if we don't invest in the now and invest in people right now, it's like, what are we keeping resilient if our communities are not even going to make the distance to that long term? Yeah.
I felt like I left with more empathy towards decision makers and also an insight into if we really want people to at those levels of government make decisions, we have to make it really easy for them to see benefits, trade-offs, et cetera, et cetera. Like it has to be a no-brainer so that when they're pressed for time and they have to make these decisions, it was just so I found that in the different solutions that we can invest in as a town, because as a group of people, we had expertise in different things. Like we had, Deesha, our curator on this podcast, is like an expert in nature-based solutions. So when we were looking at those, we were like, should we do this or this? And she was like, no, do this one. This one's better. It was like, great, do it. Yeah. If you don't have that skill set as a decision maker, it's our job, I think, in the field to give that to them.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting thing that happens as well, where we go around at tables at the start, and people are like, "How many rounds are we going to have? And are we going to get the counters and there is a sense of prediction, right? Yeah. It's kind of like I want to know, and they're trying to kind of like game the script and game the scenario. And I think they want to win. They want to win. Of course, it's a game. People want to win. Again, winning is a collective thing, but that will hurt to the side. But I think it does this interesting thing again in the short term, long term. There's also an element of uncertainty, right? And one of the things I think the game illuminates is there are a couple of moments where things land, particularly in particular areas. And so there is this sense of like, if you prepared in that scenario, if you had an evacuation centre, then you can weather that weather event in a different way to people who haven't. And I think that the game also illuminates the way in which I think the difference between kind of proactive and reactive responses to weather events, and how so often we end up having to be reactive because we're not doing any of the proactive work. But then if you put that proactive stuff in earlier, it costs you so much less than if you have to marshal like a huge disaster response.
People always say afterwards, like, oh, if we had known the storm was going to hit our town, we would have built this. Like, yeah, that's the world we live in.
No, but there's no do-overs in the game. That's the thing is it's not like being like, oh, okay, well, we didn't prepare for this storm, so we'll prepare for the next one, because the next one may never come.
Thanks for listening to this quickie.
This episode was created by our superstar podcast team at TEDxLondon. Until next time,
stay curious.